Failing to follow these tips could literally lead to the end of your Akita. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Akita Life. My name is Tony, and with me as always is Haga, the American Akita. And today we're going to be talking all about how to socialize your Akita. And this is extremely important with this breed because Akitas are known to be very independent, only like their owners, be very territorial, and not like other dogs and people. So properly socializing your Akita is the key to having a successful relationship with your dog and being able to bring them out places or have people over the house. So I'm going to go over 5 tips on how to socialize your Akita, and tips 4 and 5 are things that people very rarely talk about. Okay, so the first tip is to start as young as possible. And when I say start as young as possible, obviously not everyone is getting their Akita as a puppy, but if you are, most people are taking their Akita home between the ages of 8 weeks and 12 weeks. And if you purchase your Akita puppy from a reputable breeder, then the breeder will have started the socialization process already, not just with the puppy's litter mates and parents, but also with other people and potentially even other dogs. And this is again why it's so important to work with a reputable breeder. And I sound like a broken record because we literally talk about this in every single video, but that's just one more reason not to get your puppy from a puppy mill or backyard breeder. Now, obviously, if you are getting an adult Akita from a rescue, that's a great thing to do. And so you want to talk in depth with the rescue about that particular Akita's temperament and behavior, how they work with other dogs. And even though it is really important to start young, that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile to try to socialize an adult Akita. It's probably just going to be a little more difficult, and you're going to have to be more patient as it will take more time. Now, the reason why it's so important to start young is because expert dog trainers will tell you that the socialization window will start to close around 16 weeks. And what that means is the dogs are very impressionable prior to that 16-week mark. So starting young will make a bigger difference in the long run. But the problem is many dogs don't get fully vaccinated until 12 or 14 weeks. So what that means is when you start to have your dog interact with other dogs, you want to only do it with dogs that you trust and know are fully vaccinated and healthy. So that means avoid bringing your Akita puppy to places where there's a lot of strange dogs, which is like pet stores, like Home Depot, dog parks, which I don't recommend anyway, but we'll save that for another day. What we did with Haga is we started bringing over friends with dogs to our home, and we started outside in a neutral area, and we introduced the dogs very slowly because puppies are going to be kind of like annoying little kids to adult dogs. They don't really know how to handle themselves. They get excited very easily, and often adult dogs will be less interested in your puppy than your puppy is in the adult dogs. So if play starts to get too aggressive, or you can tell that your Akita puppy is annoying other dogs, make sure to separate them and start the socialization process with other dogs in very small doses. Now, socialization with other dogs is great, but you also want to socialize your Akita with other people because, again, Akitas really tend to bond with just their owners and can be very aloof or just not like strangers. We're very fortunate that Haga loves strangers, but the way that we were able to accomplish that is by introducing him to as many people as possible, not just when we go out and about, but also bringing people to the household because Akitas can be very defensive over any territory that they think is their own. So we invited over as many friends as we possibly could, and that really got Haga acclimated to having strangers come to the house. So tip number 2 is to continue the socialization process all through your dog's life. Of course, having your puppy interact with other dogs or other people is extremely important when they are very young, but if you don't continue that habit, they will start to fall out of practice, if you will, and they will begin to become more aloof around other dogs or potential strangers. So continuing the process of having your Akita go out into the world, meet new people, meet new dogs is extremely important. That is how you're going to be able to keep that socialization up through their entire life. You can't just do it when they're a puppy and once they turn 16 or 18 weeks, you say, okay, we did the socialization thing, we're good now. Because if you go a few months before your dog has a chance to interact with other dogs or other people, the chances are the effect of that socialization when they were very young will be diminished somewhat. Okay, tip number 3 is to exercise your dog thoroughly before socialization sessions. So dogs tend to behave a little bit better when they are a little bit tired because they don't have so much pent-up energy. So if we know that a friend with a dog is coming over the house, or we're going to be having people over, we will try to exercise Haga even a little bit more to kind of tucker him out so he's on his best behavior when people come over. Your dog is just going to be a little bit more open to meeting those strangers and be a little bit better behaved when they are fully exercised and they don't have any pent-up aggression or energy or just act crazy. Because again, puppies especially, but even adult dogs can be like children, and if your children are just stuffed inside all day and they have all this pent-up energy, they're not usually on their best behavior. Okay, tip number 4 is to expose your Akita to as many different environments as possible. And now we're getting into some of the stuff that people don't really talk about when it comes to socializing dogs. When people think of socializing dogs, they think of just interacting with other dogs and other humans, and that is a big part of it, but the socialization process goes much further than that. So we were very fortunate that when we picked up Haga from the breeder, that was out in Illinois, and so he spent a lot of time in the car driving back to the East Coast, so that was great, got him used to being in a car. He had actually flown in a plane from Idaho to Illinois prior to us picking him up, so that was a new experience for him that a lot of dogs don't have a chance to have. We stayed in a hotel on the drive back, and that was, again, another new environment. In our home, we have many different surfaces and types of textures for him to experience. So we have wood floors, laminate floors, we have rooms with carpet in them, and all of those textures create new experiences for him and get him adapted to those types of textures. In our neighborhood, we have pavement, gravel roads, we take him through the woods very frequently. So all of those new environments were great. Once he was fully vaccinated and we felt safe bringing him to places where there was a high traffic of dogs, we would bring him to the pet store, Home Depot. We would go out to lunch with places that allow dogs on their patio, so he'd be around a lot of people with noises and lots of other animals there as well. And so that plays a big role. Our last Akita mix, he did not experience any type of wood floor or slippery floor until he was an adult, and he always was very timid on that surface. Where Haga grew up with these types of surfaces, so even though he's not fully stable on them because he slips and slides, he doesn't care. He's completely used to it. He'll just run around. When we go for a ride, he's happy to jump in the car. All of this stuff makes his life just a much better experience, less stress, less anxiety, because he's very used to all of these things already. Okay, tip number 5, our 5th and final tip, is to get your Akita used to being handled, touched, poked, prodded as much as possible. And again, the socialization process is way more than just interacting with other dogs. When you bring home a puppy, you want to start massaging their paws, massaging their ears, kind of poking around their hindquarters a little bit, putting your fingers in their mouth, inspecting their mouth, getting them used to those types of things. And the reason for that is if you don't do that, then if your dog is sick and you bring your dog to the vet, it's going to be hard for the vet to do a physical exam of your Akita. They might be anxious, they might try to bite out of fear or reaction. It could be difficult to even trim your Akita's toenails if they aren't used to having their paws touched, and a lot of dogs are very sensitive about their paws being touched because that's how they kind of interact with the world. Obviously, that's how they get around, so they don't like their feet to be touched. So getting your Akita used to those things will just be so much easier in the long run for you. Obviously, if your dog isn't well, you don't want anything to prohibit them from getting the treatment that they need. Same thing goes for loud sounds and anything that might disturb your Akita. We were very lucky that when we picked Haga up, it was actually 4th of July weekend, and when we stayed in the hotel, there was fireworks going off that night, and then when we got back home to New Hampshire, there was fireworks going off in our neighborhood, and so now this dog is completely impervious to loud sounds. As you can see, I'm making this video, I'm talking, he's just completely passed out. He doesn't care one bit about what's going on around him because he's just very used to it. No matter how much socialization you do, the genetic characteristics of your dog will always be there, but they can always be improved upon as well. And so if you take a dog that is naturally inclined to not like people and be very standoffish, and then you don't socialize them, that's when you run into trouble. Because if your Akita were to bite someone, that's a big problem. Most states will require that the bite is reported to the police. There are some states that have laws regarding as soon as there is a bite, you have to give your dog up and they have to go to some type of quarantine or inspection for a number of weeks. And then there's a decision whether the dog has to be put down or not. So you want to avoid all of that, because the worst thing in the world would be having your dog taken away from you, put down, or, heaven forbid, your dog hurts someone. Obviously, you don't want that to happen either. So it really is your responsibility to take the socialization process seriously. And there's always going to be people who say, oh, my dog is so friendly. My Akita loves everybody. He's a big love bug. He's so gentle. And that's great. But not all Akitas are like that. Dogs are like people. They all have different personalities. So if your dog is a 10 on the aggressive scale, then doing the socialization might bring them down to a 7 or an 8. And while that's not as good as a 3 or a 4, it's still better than being a 10. So the more you can do this, the better off you're going to be. So if you think that I missed anything in terms of how to socialize your Akita, please let me know what you did with your Akita in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. But I hope you take these tips seriously and that they were helpful for you. All of the things we talked about will also work with adult Akitas if you are taking one home from a rescue, but don't be afraid to reach out to professional help. We all look to professionals for a number of different services. If we have legal trouble, we call a lawyer. If we have car trouble, we call a mechanic. Don't be afraid to call a qualified dog behaviorist or trainer to help you with the socialization process, especially if you're working with an adult dog and you missed that early puppy window. I'm Tony from the Akita Life. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.